welcome back to another SuperCoach video with me, JD. You were joining me for the round 18 review, where we have scored just shy of 2,400 this week. I think we needed something like a Zorka 120 to get us over the line, and he came nowhere near that in the end, really. But moved up another 300 spots to just outside the top 1,500, which is okay. I think we navigated last week pretty good. It was obviously a massive week of carnage. Gawn, Rankin, Heaney, Sexton, Miller, McGovern, and I'm sure there's others I'm missing as well. It's just like absolutely bonkers. So trades for last week, used two of the final three. We moved Gawn on for Cherry, and then we moved Rankin on for Jackson. Oh, I didn't mention Fisher, who I've got, I think. So yeah, went Jackson over Moore, who was probably the other strong consideration, just because going down in one trade, 6 weeks left now. Figured having the ruck covered be good. Don't want to have to use that one trade there for like a 1 weeker for Cherry or English if there's a concussion or a suspension or whatever it may be. So even though I expect Moore to outscore Jackson for the rest of the year, knowing I had to field them this week, thought Jackson would do well as a solo rucker than the cover we would value. And then moved Gawn on for Cherry, who's been very solid all year, to be honest. Someone I actually wanted to start, didn't start. Now I'm paying 600k for him. So yeah, I think Tom De Koning probably would have been the number one option until Pitnet was named, and then Nankervis is a very good run home. Actually picked him up in fantasy, but in this format where, I just feel like I don't trust him as much to actually make it home. Where Cherry, I actually feel like the durability is probably there. So went with him. Cherry's run home isn't too bad itself. So yeah, I think he'll be okay from here on out. Hopefully they drop Pitnet this week and Cherry gets Tom De Koning, which would be nice. And then vice captain captain was an absolute disaster. So I thought I had moved the vice captaincy off Dacos onto Goulden, which is what I did in fantasy, and I took that. It was about a 151 in fantasy, but I would have taken the 142, obviously. And I didn't. And then I had the C on Butters, which still would have been a 12-point improvement. I mean, yeah, actually, this captaincy would have got me the 2,400 as well, which is pretty annoying. But then just before that game with the Trelaw laid out news, I jumped on. I was like, oh, should I go Bont captain? Like, they'll up his CBAs after having like what season low last week. And then realized like, oh, they're going to tag me some cod. I probably should get back off this. The app had bugged like 5 minutes before lockout. I don't know if anyone else experienced this. So I hit the captaincy on the app, and it didn't update, and then I moved off the screen. So I thought it hadn't saved it, and then I came back and it had saved it. So anyway, look, a 108 after like scuffed captaincy isn't too bad. So yeah, like I guess we'll just go through the rest of the team now, and then talk through maybe what we do if you've got trades this week. Like if you've got more than one trade, I mean, if you've got no trades, really, it's just vice captaincy each week from here to the end of the year. But if you've got trades left, what do you actually do? Especially with players like maybe like Raul, who's underperformed pretty heavily. I know that'll be a conversation topic. Sarong hasn't been great. He's been getting tagged. What you actually do with them. So yeah. All right. So starting in defense, she's all down game, which is a bit of a shame. Dacos, like honestly, didn't cop as much attention as I thought he might. In this game, I know he got a little bit, but it wasn't tons, and like still couldn't deliver. But I guess pies have fallen off pretty badly, and cats are actually like picking up some form. Ryan, I saw still taking mass kick-ins, which is helping his score. They're not doing as much of the junk kick to kick, and they like using Jordan Clark's drive. So I mean the 130 that we were seeing at the start of the year, that crazy average, I don't think we're going to get for the back half. I mean, he's turned up once of his last 5, but 4 of those 5 still above 90. So yeah, like it's not great, but it'll be okay. Melbourne, West Coast, Essendon, Geelong, GWS, Port, run home. So like honestly, pretty good fixture for Freo, and they do need a win. So I don't think it's going to be terrible, but he's the type of player where if you're a super luxury position, I think there's a case for me that he's not top 6 to the end of the year. But I mean, I'm perfectly fine holding him, obviously. Houston 114. So shout out and thank you to George for benching him, because as soon as you bench a premium for a rookie, like I think you benched him for Humphreys 108, which is totally smart move. Would have done the same thing in his shoes, especially with how average Houston has been. But as soon as you do the smart move like that, you almost always unfairly get punished. That's just how the Supercoach gods work. So thank you to the rest of us Houston owners that have been in despair the last couple of weeks to get a okay score. I was hoping we'd actually get a proper moon game out of this, like a 150, but his ratio wasn't that good in the end. Has the Tigers this week, which should be a good matchup, should get another score, like good score out of that. What's his history against them like? 108, 109, 114 last three. So maybe another 110. And then Nick Martin, who was excellent for us, kicked 4 goals, was really good by foot outside of like one or two clangers. Unfortunately, one of those resulted in a direct turnover to goal, but he was really good coming off halfback again and pushing forward up the ground. Just really interesting one because he's one of our only clean users on the night, and we didn't use him enough going forward, which is frustrating. McKercher just the 79, which is disappointing after last week. So I think he had like a 16-minute bench stint in the fourth once the game was out of control, but he still took like 9 kick-ins. So he still had the majority of the kick-ins for the Roos. Carlton are pretty hard for teams to score on, and I think this will be a pretty like average matchup for him this week. I guess the big watch here for McKercher owners is whether or not Fisher comes back, because if Fisher comes back, I'd expect it to take some of his kick-ins, and we could even see McKercher's role shift with Fisher taking the halfback role and McKercher being pushed up onto a wing, and then doing something like dropping a Shields or a Stevens type. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with North selection this week after a big thumping. But yeah, like I guess some concern over McKercher's role, but otherwise he's been good so far, and I think he should hold up. Just obviously a down week this one. In the mids, already covered Bont. Butters was very good, 120. I mean, I think anytime he's not going to get tagged, he's got to be considered for vice captain captaincy, averaging about 121. Tigers up this week, 175, 158 last two. The 175 was round 2 this year, so he's someone that's got to be in your consideration for vice captaincy. They have been using Graham to tag though, and with Taranto, it looks like it's going to be out for a week with a concussion. I can't imagine them moving away from that Graham tag, so it's going to be hard, I think, to put the captaincy on him, but I mean, it feels like you probably should. Tricky one. There's a few good options though this week, which we can talk through. So Goulden, 142. Got a little bump in CBAs with Heaney out this week, and I think probably just more points to go around. Was huge in this game. Continues to be a great vice captain option, and I really should be trying to target him in those vice captaincy slots where I can. Merritt got the A and B tag, so this is who I was keen on originally for captaincy, but once the talk about the A and B tag moved off this, and then wet weather as well didn't help. I think, honestly, should bounce back against the Crows this Friday night, because once again, another team that hasn't historically tagged, 109, 136, 143 in the last 3 against them. And the 136 and 143 were both at Marvel, and they are at Marvel this week. So I think Merritt will be back in considerations for vice captaincy, despite the up and down nature of his last couple of weeks. But I mean, with vice captains, that's what you're kind of looking for. Green had, I think, like a 125 or 130 fantasy score, and then just the 93 SuperCoach went by something like 30-40% efficiency by foot. Just super wasteful, racked up the clangers. Really disappointing, because we do want some good scores out of him still. So I think to be getting that, not great. I guess the only good news is they're up against Gold Coast this week, not a team that tags. So hopefully get a good score out of him at home. Gold Coast away, we know what they're like. So should be right this week. Rosie, the 105. I thought this was going to end up being bigger too. But, given that I got off Rao to get to Rosie, this has been a massive win, especially with the money that it made as well. It's been both money and points. With the Tigers matchup this week, I expect a good game out of Rosie. Sarong, this has been probably one of the most disappointing trade-ins for the year. And I didn't think he was necessarily going to get... I mean, this is just, I don't know how else to describe it. It's just sad and disappointing. He's now gone, he's had 1 ton in the last 5, 2 tons in the last 7. Just I should have not got him. Should have gone a Dunkley or a Neil type instead. So yeah, pretty sad. And then Dawson 108. So had a bounce back in CBAs this week with ranking out, which was somewhat expected, but I think still played forward a bit, and obviously the wet weather conditions probably not suiting his like kicking strengths and marking strengths. Now he went 168 on Essendon last time they played in round 6 this year, and then 127 the round before that. So I mean, if you don't have a merit, I guess Dawson is someone you could consider as for a captaincy type, for a vice captaincy type thing on Friday, but probably not, just given he's been definitely on the downside. But I mean, Essendon's been pretty average, so they could play him into form like they did Oliver, which is honestly surprising. I may as well just talk about Rao here now. So Rao had season low CBAs in a game where Took Miller didn't play. So I don't know if he's carrying something, or if he's just not at the point where he can play out a year like he did to start the season. But if you still have a trade and you've got him in your side, I mean, I guess you probably should still consider moving him on as long as you can get him up to someone like even like Rosie now, which is cost you 80k. I think I'd consider moving Rao on. He's just looks so poor. I can't see any reason why this would turn around. Um, he has not gone above 82 in his last 5 games. So 82 against Saints, 82 against Freo, 79 against Collingwood, 79 against North, 65 against Port. Now, I actually traded him, I think, on the Freo, after the Freo game, and said it's a bit like Steele. You're always nervous about trading someone out like this into two strong matchups in Collingwood and North, and he did not fire a shot in either of those. So, yeah, if you still got him, I just don't know how you can keep him after that. There should be some positive regression at some point. Like he shouldn't be this bad for the rest of the year. But I think even if it's your last trade, I would consider, and you've got cover, I would consider trading Rao because he's going to leak so many points at the moment. If he's giving up 30 points a week to the other mids, we've got 6 weeks left. So that's like 180 points just off that. And if you've got a 23rd premium and that can cover most lines, and honestly, I think your last trade is more likely to get extra value out of upgrading off a Rao than saving it for an injury cover. It's probably a risk worth taking. I mean, it could backfire, but I think that's a risk worth taking personally. In the rucks, yeah, Cherry was good. English, just so disappointing, dude. Oh, so. Has Sam De Koning this week. So if he can't put up a good score here, I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what we're doing. He's cost a lot of money in his contract, I'll tell you that much. And then in the forwards here, so yeah, Flanders was good. Bedford looks like he may get suspended for his tackle on Taranto, which caused a concussion. I think there's a chance that's the case, in which case Flanders probably won't be tagged, which is good for us, but everyone owns him, so no, nothing too real exciting there. Caldwell continues to be good for Essendon. I think a little bit wasteful, maybe like 120 fantasy to 110 Supercoach, but honestly, been a great pickup for the last 3 weeks. I think that this is I picked him up at the same time, picked up Rosie. So what's he done in that time? 127, 134, 110. This is a huge score, especially in the forward line. So loving that pick. Yeah, Zorko, as I mentioned, needed him to pull out the 120 to drag me over the line for 2,400, but couldn't do it. And then Luke Jackson, yeah, we traded in. And then Kerno, oh my God, 3-7. My guy, how do you have 10 shots on goal and finish with the 89? So, after the last 2 weeks, it is nice that he scored something decent. This was more points this week than his last 2 weeks combined. I think he had like a 54 and a 33, which makes 87. It's something like that. He had like 87 or 88 points, I want to say, last 2 weeks. So to get an 89 this week where we had to field him, great. But far out, that could have been a 180 and would have been huge for us after the last 2 weeks, like anyone that's jumped on Kerno. So that's disappointing. They've got North this week, and North defenders look absolutely horrid for the week just gone, and gave up big time to the Dogs. So you would expect a massive Kerno game here, and actually, like, it's one of those things where if they were Friday night, you could consider like the vice captaincy there, but they're the last game on Sunday, and you'd have to be absolutely insane to go Kerno. And then we'll touch on my and many other people's heroes this week, and Billy Dowling, a 101 when we needed it most. Absolutely take that every day of the week. It's got Essendon this week as well. So if you're in a situation where, let's say, like Fisher doesn't return, I mean, or even if he does, like we've got others that we can loophole. So if you get a look at Dowling this week, and if he puts up 100 again, I think it's going to be a really hard choice on whether you bench someone like a Kerno or a Jackson. I mean, Gawn should be back, Darcy should be back, so like, having Jackson just floating around, not as appealing. Kerno, he's still a key forward, so you could consider benching there. But yeah, Dowling's going to be a nice little emergency on Friday night, and it should mean that he holds his position for the rest of the year, which is pretty handy. Okay, so yeah, like I think if you've got Rao, trade him out. I'm just gonna have a quick look at these 3 round averages. I mean, Neil, is he getting tagged soon? Swans, yeah, they'll send Roy Bottom to him, right? Like we're not gonna put up with this again. Uh, he did 144 at 187 the last 2 times he faced them. Come on. And then Gold Coast, they don't use the tagger, so he's gonna destroy them. Uh, and then Saints, Windy probably won't be back with them. They might use someone else though. Unless they send generational talent Philippou to him. Cripps has been huge, hasn't been getting attention. I imagine he'll go like decently against North as well this week. I think they're like, yeah, I mean, I've spoken about it so much with other players like Walsh and TDK, but North, Port, Collingwood, Hawks, West Coast, Saints, great run home from mid. So I know a few people have jumped on him as a little bit of a pod. I can see that working well. And yeah, despite the poorer score this week for De Koning, as long as Pitnet gets dropped again, and this is just a week of management for De Koning, because he did have maybe like 35% CBAs where he normally has 80 when he's solo rucking, he'll come good and he actually should probably make up a lot of the points that he lost this week, and maybe then some on a cherry to end the year. But this is always going to be the risk with De Koning, is that if he gets rested towards the end, if Blues have like cinched up top 4, for example, or even top 2, I could see them resting him one more time to get him right into the finals. Butter's still a good option, I think, for those that don't have him. I'm trying to figure out what his other matchups look like, because he's another one that could get tagged. So Carlton the week after, Sincotta should go to him. Swans the week after, they should have Row Bottom go to him. And then Melbourne the week after, Neil Bullen should go to him. So I guess this is pretty rough as an owner here. The next 3 weeks after this probably tags. Sicily's been good. One to consider for next year because his average is not really that great. Dunks has been very good as well, and won't get tagged as long as Neil's on the side. So I think you could look at that. Yeah, otherwise Caldwell's still a standout forward option for anyone that doesn't have and wants to jump on. All right. If you do need to do trades this week for any other reason, what are some of the cheaper guys I think you can look at still? So in defense, in McKercher's 465. Stewart has had a good month basically now as a mid, so still cheap at 506k. I think you could jump on him if you're looking for a defender. Otherwise, the other one I'd look at is probably the other De Koning brother playing ruck. He only had a 58 though on the weekend after a couple of big scores. All right, we'll just skip that then. In the midfield, yeah, I mean Rosie's still cheap. Otherwise, there's not too much I can really think of in the mids that are like. Let's have a quick look here. 3 round average. That say let's go like shopping for under 500k if it's gonna let me. I guess you got like interesting options in. The slider's not gonna work. You can't see this, but I'm trying to pull on this slider and it's just doing absolutely nothing. Hold on. Now it's only setting. What's it doing? It's only got rookies on. How did it only get rookies on? All right, let's try again. Under 500k. So I was gonna say so interesting in like some Swans being back. So you've got Parker and Mills, but I don't know like what their prices are. They're probably still quite expensive. Yeah, I mean under 600k, Rosie's the one I think so because Buddett's gonna get all the attention. There's really not too much on the way of mids. Warner I wouldn't touch. Parker was the sub but had massive like points per minute when he came on for that 56. He's 540k. I don't know if I could go there, but that's when you see that. And I think Mills had a pretty average game back. So he's sub 500k, but only scored the 55, and I think he played a lot of wings. So just in case anyone was considering those. And then the last one would be in the forwards, and really there's only one person to talk about, and that is Philippou, Mateus Philippou, who now in his second year went back and did his time in the twos. Racked it up as a mid. He's racked it up as a mid in the juniors. Come back into ones and done it well the last 2 weeks. Kicked a pretty freakish goal on the weekend too. 266k. So for those that have severely cash strapped, you could absolutely look at Philippou. And even for someone like me, right, I could use my last trade this week and get McAuliffe or someone like that up to Philippou. Would take me to like 24, I guess, if you count him. But effectively, then like Fisher, Dowling, Philippou would be my bench for the year. I'm not sure if that's actually worth a trade. But he's been pretty interesting going 112 and 101 the last 2. I think in all likelihood, despite I think Saints having a pretty friendly matchup to like a run home for inside mids, I think it's unlikely that a bottom ager like him still growing into his frame will keep up this form for the back end of the year. If he does manage to average 90 plus from here, I think it'd be a win. In all likelihood, it'd probably have him pegged at more like 80 to 85. But he becomes a pretty interesting watch list for next year because his average won't be incredibly high. He should still have forward eligibility as well. So yeah, and I imagine they just train him all preseason as a mid and throw him in there next year. So one for the watch list may go alongside Baslenka to start our 2025 sides. But yeah. Um, all right, and that's it. I mean, I guess the only other thing is like if Fish is back this week, do you consider him? I don't know. There's been enough rumors floating around that maybe he hasn't been following the instructions of the coaching staff that's he's at a risk. I hope they include him. He's playing against his old mob, bit of a revenge game this week, so you'd think they would include him, but no guarantee. And last game of the round as well, so it's a bit hard to count on it. Can't loop him with Kerno. Maybe loop him with Jackson. But anyway, we'll see. All right, so vice captain and captain this week. So we spoke about a few good options already. So Merit against the Crows, I think, is definitely one worth considering. GWS Gold Coast, I don't think there's anything really to look at there. Saints West Coast, I guess you got Marshall, that's a decent matchup. Steele, if you're desperate for a vice captaincy, you probably could. Nothing else there. Collingwood Hawks, I mean, Will Day might have a good game for any havers. If you're a Sicily owner, I guess you could look at that as a potential spike game as well, just given the state of that forward line. Geelong Bulldogs, so I think like Bont could maybe be expected to have a bit of a bounce back game. Do they send Atkins to him? Maybe, but Bont's done 141 and 146 last two against the Cats, so I think that's a option to consider there. As I mentioned, Port against the Tigers. So Butters, I think, would be a slam dunk C if they told me that it wasn't gonna. Oh, I miss Collingwood Hawks, by the way, like Dacos as well. He probably shouldn't get attention, but his form hasn't been great. But anyway, you could consider that. Yeah, so Port Richmond. So yeah, Butters probably gets tagged, so Rosie or even Houston. Now, I don't think I could captain either of these two in good faith, but they would be interesting vice captain options potentially if Graham goes to Butters. I'm not sure if Graham can keep up with Butters, to be honest. It feels like a pretty weird matchup, but crazy things have happened. Sarong has a good matchup with D's, but I could not trust him. Jackson, like I couldn't trust as a captain, to be honest. That Brisbane Swans game, I don't know if I already covered it. I feel like I'm going crazy, but I wouldn't touch anyone in that. And then Carlton North. So I feel like LDU could go big, but it would make sense to like Sincotta to go to him. Maybe Sincotta goes to Sheasel though. And then if you've got like Walsh been a bit hard to trust, but I could see him being a good captain. I could see DeConing being a good captain. I could see Cripps being a decent captain. I'd be like North seem like they're probably at the cliff now, so I'd be happy to lean into any of those. But for me, I don't have them. So I think for me, it's probably Merit into Bont or like maybe into Butters. But I keep getting burnt by some of these tags or like taggable mids. So I'm hoping Crom no tag, Merit goes fine. The problem is both Bont and Butters could get tags between Atkins and Graham, and I'd kind of back both of them to beat that. But I think there's a risk that they don't. And then beyond that, I don't really have a matchup that I like. Or like I've lost faith in a lot of these. Like I don't feel like I can trust English with a captaincy anymore. So we'll back in Merit and we'll see how we go from there. Hopefully the team responds after what was a pretty lackluster effort on the weekend. And then yeah, we'll set up to see what Dowling scores with this emergency before making a decision on Curnow, Jackson, Fisher. Hopefully Fisher's back in the midfield. McAuliffe probably gets a reprieve with Taranto out. And I could loop him with Brown for someone in the last two games. So I guess if he goes like 110, I could consider taking off Sarong, which is a massive fall from grace for Sarong. But McAuliffe also won't go 110, so it's a bit of a moot point. And then in defense, maybe I consider looping. Is it Martin? Maybe not Martin. Like Crow should be okay for him, right? Has he got history against him? I don't think he does. Oh, he does. 114, 127. Of course, he would have played them earlier this year. But his role stretch. Yeah, no, okay. We leave him out there. Houston should be okay. Dacos should be okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe but like I can't loop Fisher with Sheasel. So it'd be like Ryan against the D's. No, it'd be fine. Yeah, I don't know who I end up looping it. Maybe Dacos, something like that. Oh, I'm not gonna. Oh no, I can loop because I've got Dawson coming back. All right. Okay, so maybe we set up something like this, and we'll see how we go for the round. Anyway, hope you've had a good week. Hope your team's gone well. If you do need any advice, hit me up, and I'll try and get back to it. But I've been pretty slack on it the last couple of weeks, I must say. Just had a fair bit going on with work and a couple of other things. But yeah, thanks for tuning in as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.